Hello, class. This is Mr. Beller coming to you from my house. In the background is my lovely wife. You can see part of her arm there. Don't get out of the way. Don't worry about it. And Lily, come here. Come here, Lily.
Say hey.
And helping me out today will be my dog, Lillian. Right? She's camera shy. So anyway, look on my YouTube account and find the video, before you watch this video, find the video that introduces absolutism and talks about the characteristics of an absolute monarch. This video will focus on the first page of your notes, dealing with the rise of absolutism in France. And so the first heading says, wars and religious conflicts between the Huguenots and the Catholics create violence and chaos in France. This violence and chaos between the French Protestants, the Huguenots, and the Catholics climaxed in 1572 with the St. Bartholomew Day's massacre, in which upwards to 20,000 French Huguenots will be killed. One of these French Huguenots survives this massacre, Henry of Navarre, and Henry is going to become King of France, which is problematic for both him and France in general. He is a Protestant, and he's set to rule over a predominantly Catholic country. And so, what does he do? Henry of Navarre is what is known as a politique. Someone who puts political concerns over religious beliefs. And so he is quoted as saying that Paris is well worth a mass. And so he does not mind converting to Catholicism if this means that his reign as king or monarch of France will bring stability and order to the French government and to the French society. And so that is what he does. He converts to Catholicism. He also, though, throws a bone to his French Protestant brethren, or to the French Huguenots, by passing in 1598, or signing in 1598, what is known as the Edict of Nantes, which grants French Protestants the ability to worship or practice a religion without the fear of persecution. So he does bring in a sense of religious toleration, to France. Unfortunately for Henry of Navarre in 1610, he will be assassinated, and Louis XIII, a very weak ruler, will be brought to the throne of the French government. Louis XIII is weak, but he has a minister in his government, a man named Cardinal Richelieu, who will take some steps to strengthen the French monarchy, and in essence, put France on the path to absolutism. Cardinal Richelieu is the king of France in everything but name. He is the one that's making all the important decisions for the French government. So what does he do to strengthen the French monarchy? Number one, he does target Protestants. He allows them to worship. He allows them to maintain their Protestant faith, but he puts into law the fact that they cannot have any walls around their city, hopefully discouraging them from being able to plot and conspire against the French government, maybe attempt to overthrow the French government, and then being able to retreat behind these city walls when the French military counterattacks. So no walls around Protestant cities. He also challenges the power of the nobility by, essentially saying the same thing, that they cannot have any fortified castles, discouraging them from attacking or, hypothetically, theoretically attacking the French government and then being able to retreat behind these walls. He wants to strengthen the French presence as far as, how the role they play in European affairs. He does this by getting France involved into some foreign wars, namely the 30 Years' War, which is a war in Central Europe over religion and territory. And he gets France involved on the side of the German Protestants, which seems funny because Cardinal Richelieu is Catholic, but he sides with the Protestants in the 30 Years' Wars 30 Years' War to weaken the power of France's biggest rival at this time, Spain. The Habsburg family in Spain is Catholic, and by siding with the Protestants in the 30 Years' War, he will successfully weaken Spanish influence in European affairs. What does all this? What do all these effects have on French intellectuals or French culture at this time? French writers will turn towards a belief called skepticism, which we talked about during the Renaissance unit. Skepticism is the belief or the idea that you should continue to challenge, accepted beliefs or what people believe to be true or what people believe to be the truth. Continue to challenge any conventional norms or beliefs. Look to another video on my YouTube site in which I will discuss the reign of Louis XIV. Hello class, this is the third video in the segment on absolutism in which I discuss how did Louis XIV become the most powerful monarch of his time. Louis XIV takes power in 1661. He is in his 20s, so he's relatively young, and he's going to rule all the way until 1715. So you have essentially a 50-year reign of Louis XIV, and so he takes some steps to make France strong economically, politically, and to make them the cultural center of Europe. What does Louis XIV do to strengthen or to put himself on the path of being an absolute monarch? Number one, he kicks all French nobles off of any government councils that they were on. In effect, he removes them from being able to make or to have any impact on French policies or decisions that the government makes. He gives that power to himself. So he, in effect, has complete or absolute control over the French government. He also grants some power, some additional responsibilities to middle-class government officials that are located outside of Paris. And these government officials are the ones that will collect taxes and administer justice. And therefore, he will be consistently and constantly be in contact with them, making sure that they are enforcing his policies and promoting his values. To make France stronger economically, he puts a man named Jean-Baptiste Colbert as finance minister of France, and Colbert will take some steps to strengthen the French economy. Colbert believes in something called mercantilism or mercantilism, and this is a belief that a country should be self-sufficient. They should have a favorable balance of trade in which they export or they sell more goods than they import, not relying on goods made outside of their country. To do this, Colbert expands French manufacturing. He will give French companies more government money. He will give them tax credits in which they can, use this additional money or revenue to produce more, to hire more, and to make them stronger, more competitive against these outside competitors. He will also protect French companies from outside competition by putting into place tariffs. These are taxes on imported goods or goods made outside of France, and thereby making foreign goods more expensive and less appealing to the French citizens, hopefully encouraging them to buy goods made inside of France and therefore keeping money in France. He will also encourage people to settle in French colonies, namely in Canada, and encouraging the French fur trade, once again bringing a favorable balance of trade to France in which they will export or sell more goods than they buy from other countries, and then making France a stronger economic power internationally. So what does Louis XIV do to promote the arts? Louis XIV is known as the Sun King. He believes in living a very luxurious and grand style, and he surrounds himself with items of luxury. And he does promote. He's a huge patron of the arts. And a great example of Louis XIV, his power, or the great example of Louis XIV's, being Louis XIV being an absolute monarch, is his palace at Versailles. Versailles is located about 11 miles south of Paris, and Louis XIV decides to build this tremendous castle, palace there. This castle is about 500 yards, as far as that's how big it is. That's how big this estate is. So imagine 5 football fields stacked up one after the other, and this is Louis XIV's palace. You have 500, servants, cooks, waiters, willing to serve or waiting to serve Louis XIV here. And also, Louis XIV uses his palace at Versailles to weaken the power and the influence of the French nobility. He orders the French nobles to stay with him at Versailles, thereby limiting their influence that they have in their hometowns. If they're not in their hometowns outside of Versailles, they can't spread ideas or they can't gain support in any sort of attempts to challenge the French king. Louis XIV also, by keeping them at Versailles, he makes the nobles, compete for his attention. Every morning when Louis wakes up, he will have 100 nobles waiting to help dress him and serve him. So thereby, making them dependent on him. Louis XIV will encourage and support the arts. He doesn't do this in the medieval sense, in which the arts are used to glorify God. He doesn't do this in the Renaissance sense or the humanist sense, which the arts are a way to glorify the human potential. He uses the arts to glorify the king and to promote values that are important to him. Louis XIV also wants to make France a strong, military power. He wants to expand the French Empire, and he is successful at first in doing this. However, by the 1680s, he fails in his attempt to expand, the French Empire. Why or how does he do this? When he is successful in expanding the French territory in the 1660s and 1670s, you start to see countries in Central Europe band together and form what is known as a League of Augsburg. And these smaller, weaker countries are forming an alliance with each other to balance or to equal the power of France. And so when Louis XIV gets involved in these wars in the 1680s and onwards, he or France has to, go against multiple countries in which they prove to be unsuccessful in achieving their military objectives. Some of these wars are, the War of Spanish Succession or the 7 Years' Wars, in which France is going to be unsuccessful in expanding their territory. When Louis XIV dies in 1715, he leaves a legacy both, he leaves a legacy in which history will look both positively on and negatively. Some positive aspects of Louis XIV's reign as King of France or absolute monarch of France is that France does emerge, as the leader in Europe, both politically and culturally. People look to France for influence in the arts, and they are the strongest political country in international or European affairs. Negatively, Louis XIV leaves a legacy of debt. With his wars, with the building of the Palace of Versailles, with his luxurious lifestyle, he will more than triple the debt that France has to deal with. And post 1715, this burden of the debt will be placed upon the shoulders of the French people in the forms of taxes, and this debt will continue to be a problem, and eventually will be one of the causes of the French Revolution towards the end of the 1700s. Please look for some of my other videos in which I will discuss Central Europe and Russia and England.